You don't like that.
No, for sure. Well, people say it reads quickly, so I take that as a good thing.
Yeah. Were you familiar with the Art Bell show that I was just referring in the intro?
Yes, I didn't listen to it as much as I could because of the time, and I have to get up early too. But no, I know that he had quite the following.
Yeah. So this story starts on Christmas Day, like when I was a kid in the 60s.
Yeah, what happened is they're having a party at a big estate on the water in Greenwich, Connecticut, which is a very affluent town, if you know the area. And these young children go outside, the young cousins, and they start throwing snowballs. And there's a very small one, 7-year-old Shippy Pen. His name is Arthur Shipkin Penfield, but his nickname is Shippy. And his older cousins throw snowballs at him. He gets a little frustrated, and in a huff, he goes out to the end of this old rickety dock protruding into the inlet. And he looks up in the sky, and he sees a glow. And when his cousins come to get him, he's sitting at the end of the dock shivering and catatonic. He doesn't respond. And a lot of the book is about what happened to Shippy that night at the end of the dock. And it throws a whole series of events into the story that goes between 2007, 1963, and 2052, the future.
Oh my gosh. And that's the part that, oh my God, you have to wonder if some of that stuff isn't, because you know how science fiction quite often predicts the future. And so you have to wonder, So did this story happen as you wrote it, or were you driving around thinking about it and decided to write it?
Well, it's funny. All of the above, I guess, is the right answer, because I had the idea of the present battling with the future to change the interim period. But as you write, and I wrote this over several years, obviously, as you write, other ideas come up. You understand your characters, and you say, no, he wouldn't do that. He would do this. Or she wouldn't do that. She would do this. So it's organic, I guess.
But this story goes back way to the Mayflower.
Yeah, that's sort of the backstory. The Penfields are a very aristocratic American family that came over on the Mayflower, and the family patriarch, Charles Penfield, had an untoward incident with a servant girl on the ship, which caused her to jump off the stern and commit suicide. And the spirit of this servant girl vows to come back every other generation to the Penfield family and to embarrass them. So that's what the crux of the book is about. Characters in the year 2007 are trying to reshape their future to avoid the timing of the curse. And characters, family members in the future, 2052, are trying to change their past, all to change the timing of the curse by a few years so it misses them. So they're at odds, and the interim period keeps on changing based upon actions that they take to change either the past or the future.
Oh my gosh.
Okay.
Now, in order to do this, do you have to understand... okay, this is another dumb question. I can feel it happening. Do we have to understand time travel or quantum physics, or can we just let all theories aside and just kind of run free with our imaginations?
I would say that you don't have to understand quantum physics and space-time and all that, but one of the things I tried to do was make it as realistic as possible and use real science to the extent possible.
So believable.
For instance, quantum physics, which the world all accepts, human consciousness plays a role. Now, human consciousness, I think, would be tied to ESP, ghostly apparitions, and things like that. So science really doesn't understand human consciousness, and that leaves an opening for the possibility of all these different phenomena that you read about and that Art Bell used to talk about so eloquently.
Right. So I do what Art Bell did. I talk on a microphone. Now, unlike Art Bell, I have done 0 experiments. I don't know if he ever did it or not. So everything I know about quantum physics, time travel, anything of that sort, is either from a guest by talking to them, or there was a movie, or there's been more than one movie, but the one that comes to mind is What the Bleep Do We Know? Do you remember that movie?
I have seen it.
So in that movie, they demonstrate, for those who've never seen it, it's not a story. It's kind of an explanation of, I guess, quantum physics 101, I guess, is the best way.
Yeah.
But they kind of show these particles that behave differently when they're observed, which is the human consciousness part.
Yeah, according to the Niels Bohr School of Quantum Physics, a particle only exists as a wave until an observer is present. So basically, the universe is observer dependent, and if that's the case, you can extrapolate all these psychic phenomena that people talk about. You can come up with a reasonable explanation.
But you also, your characters also seem to be affected by alternate universes.
Well, when you get into time travel, the alternate universes sprout up because, you probably heard of the grandfather paradox, right? So if I go back in time and kill my grandfather, then I no longer exist in this universe. So the only way to justify that is for another universe to pop up and where I didn't kill my grandfather. So,
oh gosh, that's a crazy thought. So were you getting tangled up in those theories in order to tell a story, or again, this is almost the same question I had earlier, but do you just not worry about it? It's what I read so far. Robin finished it, but I'm not a good fast reader. But what it sounds like so far for me is that you were very careful to try to be as accurate as possible based on what we believe or what we know, right?
Yes, I tried to at least make everything plausible based upon known science, but I never let it get in the way. The story has to be what drives it. And the story is about people as I said earlier, people in the year 2007 battling people in 2052 to change the interim. And by that process, parallel universes pop up. And it was hard for me to keep track of it at times when I was writing, and I had a lot of charts on the wall.
Oh, really?
But you do have Professor Christopher Penfield in there. He's trying to help Shippy, but then he also has a ghostly experience of his own.
Yeah, and now he sees his cousin, Ophelia, who died of cancer in the 1980s, and she comes to him when we're not sure if it's a ghost or if it's something going on in his head, but she reveals to him that he's the father of Shippy, and she's the mother, so there was a little bit of hanky-panky going on there, and but that makes him resolve to try to do what's best for Shippy.
See, now that's the part of the story, by the way, that whole human interaction, human relationship part. Yeah. That is, it's almost like a secondary story because for me as a reader, because there's the part of me that's the geeky kid that always wanted to know more about science but never really will, and then there's just the guy who just simply likes a great story, and I think that's the human. I think that's what the characters bring to the book.
No, yeah, I mean, as I said, the story has to be primary. Everything else helps you, and it gives you credence and credibility, but the story has to be about humans trying to overcome a big obstacle. And in this case, it's sort of two ways, because people in the future and people in the present have different obstacles to overcome.
But Shippy is really not coherent himself, though.
No, Shippy is catatonic. Something weird happened. I won't be a spoiler and say what happened. But something happened on the dock that night, and he's catatonic. And he's hospitalized for 50 years. But But in a parallel universe, he's a successful doctor and philanthropist. So the question becomes, which of the Shippy is real and which isn't? And have you ever heard of Schrodinger's cat?
No.
That's a quantum physics paradox.
Oh, wait.
Where
Yeah, tell me again, because I might have.
Schrodinger's cat.
Yeah, no, I heard what you said, but I mean, tell me what the story is, because I feel like we had a segment on this show about a few of those stories, and that one may have been one of them. Can you tell me what that is?
Okay, it's going to be complicated, but I'll try, okay?
Okay.
So, Erwin Schrodinger was a physicist, a colleague of Einstein's and whatnot. And so we were talking earlier about a particle is not visible. On a particle, it does not exist until it's observed. So his paradox was, let's put a cat in a box. Let's put a piece of radioactive material in that box and a Geiger counter. If a particle is emitted, the Geiger counter sets off opens a vial of poisonous gas. So that would make the cat die. But since the particle has to be observed, until the box is open, you don't know if the cat is neither alive nor dead. So it's in a state of what they call suspended animation, or I'm searching for the word. There's a scientific word for it. Superimposition.
Okay.
So there's a live cat and a dead cat simultaneously. So those could be two different universes. I hope I didn't confuse a lot of people. That's not an easy. I didn't expect to have to explain that today.
Okay, well, no, you did.
Brilliant.
No, you did good. You did good.
Absolutely brilliant.
But did the experiment take place, or was just a thought?
It was a paradox because I believe, and I may be wrong, Schrodinger was a skeptic of quantum physics, and he said if Bohr is right, then you would have a paradox, and that's how those smart physicists back in the
Oh man! But see, I would argue, if I were in the room, I would argue that isn't thinking about it, observing it. I mean, the very fact that we're aware of it is a way of observing it.
Yeah, but the actual particle, the radioactive material, is in a closed box, so you really aren't observing it until the box is open.
Oh my gosh, this is why I talk on radio.
No, but it's confusing, and even though I've written about it, it's, as you can see, it's hard for me to describe it.
So I have a question for you as an author. This is more about writing than it is about this particular story. And I'm going to use a metaphor. I've gone on trips a lot, and I'll visit a town, and I plan on staying there a day. But I'll just like that town, and I'll stay there a week. Is that what happened here? I mean, this is a long book. Did you visit this and say, "Oh, I'm staying here. This is just a good place to be"?
A lot of the venues in the book are places that I've lived and loved. I mean, there's a town called Seagirt, New Jersey, which I absolutely adore, and that's where the ghost hunter Ed Swan lives and dies. And spoiler alert. So no, I like to try to find the character of a place, and I like to set up the venue to make it an integral part of the story, almost as integral as the characters.
Yeah.
Do you ever participate in human consciousness studies?
No, I never have, but I've read a lot of research papers on them, and there's some phenomenal stories. In the book we use a technique called Gansfelding, which is real, where people put half ping pong balls over their eyes and pump white noise into their ears, and which creates a sense of sensory deprivation. And if you're psychically gifted, you can have psychic experiences. And at Duke University, at the Rhine Center, which is really the only parapsychology academic unit in, I think, the world, they had this one fella who they could put him into a Gansfeld state, so he's, sensory deprived, and his mind traveled over to a building far across campus, and he read back what was on the blackboard.
Wow.
So, and he did it very accurately. But again, people say, well, why don't I have ESP?
Yeah.
Well, and I say back to them, well, why can't I run as fast as Usain Bolt? Why can't I play tennis like one of the great, like John McEnroe? So I mean, these people that have these abilities are really on the long tail of the bell curve. So that's that. Not everyone has that gift.
I want to tell you a short version of a story that could be longer, but I don't want to take up your time. But it's a psychic moment that I had, and I can't slip into it and tell people's futures or anything like that. But I had one. I had a moment, and I'm convinced it was real. Here's the short version of it. I was falling asleep on the couch, and I saw in like a sleep state a woman on a phone, and I sat up, and I knew the woman, and I knew she was calling me, and I knew the phone was going to ring. It wasn't like I wondered; I knew it. And my sister was in the room, and I said, "The phone's going to ring. It's going to be Mrs. Whatever." I know the name to this day, but I don't want to say it on there because she probably lives in the area. But anyway, so and then it was her, and like it was. I had no idea what she was going to say, but my point is, I slipped into, for one tiny moment, what some psychics say they can do at will, but I can't do it at will. I don't know how to do it. But.
Yeah, well, that was certainly ESP. I mean, there's a chance it could have been coincidental, but but there's just as good a chance that it wasn't. So you will probably have some latent psychic abilities, which under the right conditions manifest themselves.
I still can't run as fast as Usain Bolt, though.
No.
Did you get lost sometimes while writing your book, and you had to reread what you've written before?
Yeah, and one of the complicating factors is it was written out of order.
Oh.
So that really confuses you. But then at the end, it all came together, and I worked with some good editors, and we made it happen. And it was, I always tell people, writing has to be its own reward. You got to love the craft of writing, and not expect to make a lot of money. And so I love writing. So. That's why I was willing to invest so much time in it.
What about the publishing process? Was it a hard sell because of the length?
Well, I published it myself, actually.
Oh, okay. Well, that helps.
It's tough to navigate the traditional publishing world, and really they only want to publish books by celebrities because they have a built-in following.
That's right.
So,
yeah, good. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So it's sort of analogous to an indie movie, and I happen to think indie movies most of them are a lot better than the mainstream ones.
A lot of yeah. The other books that I found on Amazon that you've written are like a third the size of this one. Is that just because the story wrapped up quicker in the other two books?
Well, they were much more, as I would say, linear. Mean Spirits, which is the first book I wrote, actually is the prequel to this book. But what made this book such a challenge was that you had the present, you had the future, and you had everything in between. And so it wasn't really linear, so to speak. But I really took a lot of painstaking effort to make it simple to understand. I think, Robin, you said you read it, and you'll know that there's demarcations, and you know exactly where and when you are when you get to a certain chapter.
Oh, certainly. You had to do historical research also for this book.
Yes. To be a writer, I think you have to be a perpetual student. And I like to learn, and, so I had to learn a lot about different venues, about history, about quantum physics, as we mentioned, and parapsychology. So even though that's not an accepted science, I wanted to at least stay true to what their learnings were.
So if this is made into a movie, which actor will play Jimmy?
Jimmy Mashimoto Penfield.
Who?
I'm
Yes.
trying to think. Who do you think?
Oh, I don't know. It's got to be somebody quirky, like an Andy Kaufman, but he's dead, of course.
Yeah.
It's got to be somebody like that, right? It's got to be somebody who's a little bit wild, like Christopher Lloyd was in the what was that?
Back to the Future.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
Taxi.
Well,
Yeah, the taxi character I meant. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Jimmy is sort of a Steve Jobs, Elon Musk on steroids. And he's very, very quirky, very paranoid, and brilliant. So whoever fits those categories, whoever could pull that off, that would be a great role, actually.
Yeah.
For the right actor.
Yeah. Oh, Johnny Depp could. I mean, he's kind of a quirkiness about him,
Yeah.
doesn't he?
Yeah.
Did-
Go ahead.
Did your book Mean Spirits kind of sneak into this one?
Well, as you know, basically the things you have to know from Mean Spirits for this book are summarized in like 10 pages or so. But Mean Spirits really is about the origins of the Penfield family curse and how it first manifested itself and how they came to learn that it existed.
Yeah, you're absolutely a fascinating writer.
The one thing that comes to mind, though, without the benefit of time travel, is am I doing something today that will affect somebody 3 generations from now that I'm related to, let's say? And if so, can I do something today to prevent that? You know what I mean? So that's kind of the way I really look at it, as a real way of handling this without the time travel part.
Well, you see, very trivial things today can make a humongous difference in the future.
Yeah.
For instance, suppose I was in Dallas on November 22nd, 1963, and I bumped into Lee Harvey Oswald on the street and he sprained his ankle. Okay, that would have changed history. That was trivial.
You would
right?
never know.
So,
yeah.
yeah. So...
Roger, thank you for being on the air with us. I have a copy of Roger's book. If you would call me and ask for it, I'll leave it on the desk tree here, but I only have one, so one of you will get it. The rest of us have to go buy it. I did find it on Amazon. Do you want to direct us to a different website?
Oh, yes. The book's website is www.timeframedbook.com. That's timeframed with an ED at the end, book.com.
Okay, excellent. Timeframedbook.com. Roger, I hope I said your name right. Is it Chiocchi?
You got it right. You're very good. You must have ESP.
I did once, a long time ago. Roger, thank you for being on the air with us today. That was fun.
It was my pleasure. Thank you.
We'll be right back.
Broadcasting from